From London, England, where the Queen lives.
Recorded live from an underground bunker and packaged into an MP3 with a pretty little picture. Helping to kickstart your day with the motivation and inspiration you need 365 days a year. This is the Learn, Develop, Live podcast. And this is your host, Chris Jaggs.
Good morning! Welcome. This is the Learn, Develop, Live podcast, and I'm your host, Chris Jaggs, speaking to you from a secret underground bunker on the outskirts of good old Barnet. So what is up with you and your big wide world today? Thanks for joining me on what will be a little bit of a different episode than normal. I don't have any story for you, but a bit more about podcasting. And I'm sure you've all heard about the recent Spotify and Joe Rogan podcast deal. Yes? No? You must have. You must have heard a whisper at least. I mean, it's only worth, what, £82 million or $100 million if you want a bigger figure? Before we kick off the week, hey, you know I like to appreciate and acknowledge you good people. You know, the ones that have gone to trouble with dropping me a review. So, I'll give you that shout out back to you. This week, we have Kiki Gurley, who says, if you need a quick boost of motivation and energy to get things done, then you listen to this podcast. I love how the host has a good sense of humour and gets to the point. Looking forward to catching the next one. Thank you, Kiki. I was actually told the other day to cut the jokes, but hey, look, if you say the sense of humour works, then we'll keep it in. Thank you. Second review comes in from Mama Labs, who said, super amazing podcast with the best host. Highly recommended. Look, again, massive thank you. I can confirm no money was exchanged for that incredible review. Thanks, Mama Labs. I hope to continue to serve you. Now, let's have the drop and let's talk about podcasts.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
The Learn, Develop, Live podcast. Motivating you like letters motivate Sesame Street.
Right then, let's get the episode moving and let's talk about the big Joe Rogan and Spotify deal. Actually, out of interest, do you listen to this on Spotify? If you do, give me a shout. So, it's been widely covered across the media and quite a few podcasts I listen to myself have also mentioned it. But the reason isn't about the amount of money. Well, okay, in a way it is, but it's more about what the whole deal will mean for podcasting in general. First up, for those of you who don't know who Joe Rogan is, he is an American comedian, podcast host, obviously, mixed martial arts commentator, has also worked as a television host and an actor. So, Joe, what about this podcast? The Joe Rogan Experience is audio as a podcast and video. It was launched on December 24th, Merry Christmas, 2009 by Rogan and comedian Brian Redbane, who also produced and co-hosted. Okay, so we're all up to speed now? Good stuff. Rogan invites a wide range of guests, including actors, musicians, comedians, politicians, conspiracy theorists onto the show, which has a massive audience now. The Joe Rogan Experience is huge. Last year, the podcast was downloaded roughly 190 million times per month. He is the highest profile individual podcaster who is not affiliated with a media organisation. The controversial entertainer also has, wait for it, 8.42 million subscribers to his YouTube channel, and this up until now has shown interviews in video form. Obviously this will probably stop when the Spotify deal kicks in. The full library of the Joe Rogan Experience dates back 11 years and will become exclusive to Spotify before the end of the year, with the current show moving sometime in September. So what is the big deal and why is it relevant to podcasting? Well, the multi-year deal is believed to be worth £82 million or $100 million and is the biggest podcast deal to date. One of the biggest wins that Spotify will get from Joe Rogan is the amount of subscribers. Literally millions. The YouTube figures mentioned earlier are impressive, but the same content is also being consumed on other platforms as well. Spotify could benefit from many of those viewers and listeners switching to their service. Many of those users may have a Spotify account already, but if they're able to maintain, a conservative estimate, 10%, then brand new users, you're looking at 1 to 2 million people. For Rogan, the deal has a deeper aspect to it, which may be well known to YouTubers or podcast followers already. In fact, I believe the switch to Spotify from YouTube was not moved by money only, but arguably also out of frustration for the YouTube policies. On his podcast, Joe Rogan has expressed his frustration several times, complaining about YouTube trying to control the way people communicate, so that it's feasible to them to make a profit. Another issue he discusses is censorship, which several other public personalities have also criticised. By getting one of the biggest and most visible stars of YouTube's podcasts, Spotify lightly set itself to acquiring the interest of many others, and there'll be plenty of other content creators that are willing to shift away from the Google platform. Spotify has a strong competitor in Apple, and they're also trying to expand their original content offer. However, Apple's recent moves are small and cannot compare to Spotify's aggressive deal. It is safe to say that Apple has fallen behind in the podcast race. Needless to say, Apple could start spending more than Spotify to gain traction. But this is easier said than done. However, for the same reason that buying Cristiano Ronaldo or LeBron James guarantees more revenue than buying a much lower tier player, popularity and audience matters, and Spotify has so far made the most successful move. In years to come, Rogan's move to Spotify could be seen as the landmark movement that started the shift from the market-dominant YouTube to the rest of the other platforms. And YouTube's market is very large. In the US market alone, YouTube is expected to make $5.5 billion in advertising revenue. And the online advertising market is growing at 7.7% and a growth rate. Moreover, YouTube is watched by the vast majority of younger people, reaching 81% of US people aged 15 to 25 and 71% aged 26 to 35. Capturing a slice of the younger generation should set up Spotify for a bright future. With the big figures flying around the air, the real reason to why this deal had so much press is about the deeper implications it could bring to the industry. The kind of figures involved in the deal are incredibly rare in the podcast world, and Rogan will now likely earn more money than most musicians on Spotify. The deal itself has just paid Rogan the equivalent value of over 26 billion streams for a podcast license. Compare that to a musician who would need to generate 23 billion streams on Spotify to earn what they're paying Joe Rogan for his podcast rights. Add those together, and the current deal means that Spotify values Rogan more than any musician in the history of the world. So, in conclusion, the £82 million price tag is that. While it could be shocking to many, an in-depth look at the deal shows that it is indeed a winning move for Spotify. Advertising revenue, subscriber growth, market share, and future original content are all important factors. Speaking of share prices though, it's reported that just 23 minutes after the deal was announced, the share price for Spotify skyrocketed up by $1 billion. And while maths isn't my strong point, even I can see that investing £82 million or $100 million into one show is incredible business when the share price increased 10 times that. Spotify will hope that when Rogan's podcast does arrive, September-ish, the exclusive nature of the show will bring millions of listeners from other platforms to Spotify, which will lead to so many other opportunities. If the plan executes as well as expected, the future will only become brighter, and now the benchmark has been set, who else will we see being snapped up for the next exclusive platform offer? The powers of the podcast. I've been doing this podcast since October last year and it continues to grow. 280 episodes in and several thousand downloads. YouTube, SoundCloud, and of course, iTunes and Spotify. And you can pretty much download it from anywhere that a podcast is available for. The point of this episode was that, well, you clearly like podcasts. I mean, you're listening to one right now, aren't you? There has never been a better time now to get your own podcast started with lockdown still holding on to pretty much the world. Fun fact for you, there are now over 1 million different podcasts out there. A few stats say that 34% of the entire population of America listen to podcasts. And even bigger, 54% of people in Korea. Crazy numbers, I know. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, there's so many podcasts out there already. What could you possibly add? Well, you can add yourself. If you launch a podcast this week, next week, it's totally 100% authentic to you. If podcasting is a subject you'd like to talk to me about, let me know. If the demand's there, let's do an episode on it. I want to give you what you want to hear. I've helped a couple of podcasters get themselves off the ground, and now they're going from strength to strength. But because they want to do it. If you want to talk more, get on the calendar, ldlcall.com. Book your slot and we'll talk. It'll be like two people talking like we've known each other for years. Okay, I'll wrap this up. Keep going, people, with your dreams and your big plans. Tell me what you plan to do. Remember, ldlcall.com. I'm waiting for you. But for now, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.
Goodbye.
What? It's over already?
All over.
Thank you for listening to the Learn, Develop, Live podcast. I hope you feel as warm, motivated, and fuzzy inside as I do. You can connect with Chris at learndeveloplive.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
I won't say goodbye. I'll just say until we meet again.
Until next time, join the motivation. Motivation.